Coming up next, we have Nadine, aka Neven. She's the lead product specialist for Komplete, and she's going to be showing us more tips and tricks and using something really cool called Crypt. So yeah, hold on to your hats.
Yeah, thanks very much. I'm Nadine. I'm the lead product specialist for Komplete at Native Instruments. And what I wanted to do today, I hope everyone can hear me all right, actually. What I want to do is show you how I go about designing sounds and like show you a couple of instruments and give you like some tips and tricks on what you can do. So I guess one scenario that a lot of people are probably familiar with, I am definitely, is like you're sitting in the studio, you're trying to get like this ultimate sound, you're trying to find this really cool sound, and you're turning all these knobs, you're tweaking left, you're tweaking right, but you're not really getting anything like really interesting. And then, you start to wonder at some point, like, how do they do it? Like, are these like artists that inspire me? Are they like some sort of magicians or something? Or do they have like some like top secret instrument that I just don't know about yet? And like, if you're me, then you go on the internet and you look for this instrument and then you never find it. So one thing that I actually learned when I was working in the sound design department at NI and creating like presets for like Massive and Absinthe and Battery was the importance of sound layering, which is obviously not a new concept at all. But what I want to do today is I want to show you a couple of ways you can use it creatively to create like these like twisted, complex, rich sounds that I really like a lot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine that with something else that I really love, which is randomness, because I really like to create these things. I call them like happy accidents. Just get my laptop up on screen, and then we're ready to go. Or not. All right. Okay. So I'm going to show you a couple of things today, and the first thing I'm going to show you is one super fast way to come up with interesting sounds. And I'm going to show it to you using Polyplex. So Polyplex is a reactor-based instrument. It's a creative sampler, and what you can see is it has these 8 pads over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I can play them. And right now I'm just triggering like the factory library sounds, But what I want to do is I want to load my own samples into Polyplex instead of just using them with like this standard stuff that everybody gets when they buy this product. So I created this folder on my hard drive over here, and what I did was I just basically threw in tons of like random stuff into this folder. I just wanted to have a lot of variety to use with Polyplex. So I'm just going to play you a few of the things that are in there. So I've got like a hi-hat, some subs in there because I like subs. Got some like rain that I sampled recently. Some sounds, like gaming sounds I sampled off YouTube. A lion because I like animals. Got some ambient stuff from Machina and some synths. And then I've got like some like Blade Runner sample and some vocal bits and bobs. And like dog. And so I've got like really random stuff in there. And what I want to do now is I want to load all of these things into Polyplex and use them to hopefully create something interesting. Because as you've probably heard, on its own, like the source material is pretty basic. It's pretty standard stuff, nothing too fancy. And what I want to do is I want to see if I can create something interesting using these sounds anyway. So how do I get them in there? How do I get my samples in there? So you just click on this little icon over here, and down at the bottom, you see this little piano roll. I've already done it to save a little bit of time, but what you do is you just you select all of your samples, and you just drag them over to this area, and then they just become assigned on the piano roll automatically. That's more or less it. And there are a couple more steps, and I was thinking of whether I was going to show that to you today, and then I decided against it. So what we're going to do instead, the guys from ADSR did like a 10-minute tutorial on how to get your sounds into Polyplex, and we're going to share that on Facebook tomorrow. So you'll be able to see it there. So now I've basically got all of my sounds loaded up. I've got I think I took like 100 or 120 samples, like wide variety, and I've got them loaded up right now. So I'm just going to play you a couple of stuff. I messed around with Polyplex, and I'm going to play you a couple of things what came out. But first, I'm just going to briefly explain to you what does it do. Yeah. So what Polyplex does is it goes into this folder that I just created with all these random samples. It goes in there. It grabs 4 of them. Yeah. 4 random samples. And then the other thing it does, it randomizes all of the sound settings for all of these samples. So it messes with things like pitch, envelopes, panning, volume, modulation, all of that stuff. And then it grabs 4 of these like now manipulated samples, and it assigns them. It assigns them to 8, to each of these 8 pads here in Polyplex. So I'm just going to play a couple of examples while I fix this. It's not working. Is it back on? Is it back on? All right, cool. So yeah, these are just a couple of examples. As you can hear, like I took some like seemingly like random stuff, and now I'm already getting some really interesting sounds. How did I get to this point? Yeah. So if you look on the Polyplex interface, you can see there are tons and tons of dice. Yeah, all over it. You've got some here. You've got one up here. You've got some down here for the categories. And basically what this does is it randomizes stuff, yeah? So I can randomize things like pitch, I can randomize things like volume, and I can randomize the samples. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll the dice, yeah, on this sound over here. Yeah? And basically I'm just going to roll it and see what comes out. And I can keep on rolling. I can use the touch strip as well, actually, for this. And if you're like really lucky, yeah, you're going to start hearing a lot of really cool stuff. If you're not as lucky, you're only going to hear like some stuff that you like in it. Yeah, and what happens is how I created these sounds before. You start hearing things you like, and then you protect them from randomization just by doing things like this. These are the 4 samples, and I just lock it. I like these 2 samples, so I'm just going to lock them, and I'm just going to keep on randomizing until I get to that sound that I really like. And yeah, this is how I basically got stuff like this. Yeah. The cool thing about this is it's really, really easy. You're just rolling the dice, and you're using your ears to be the judge of, what sounds good and what doesn't. And yeah, if you look into the interface, you can see. I hope you can see. There are these bars that keep on moving like back and forth, and that's modulation. And I think that's a really big part of sound design as well, that you can use modulation. In this case, it's volume and it's panning to just create these dynamics in your sound. So the sound's always changing as it's being played. And I can take that one step further. So for example, with this sound, I can put like the LFO on the pitch, and then it does this. So it's really, really easy to manipulate. I can really go into so much detail on what I want to do. But the basic process is you randomize things and you just listen to the bits that you like. And then once you start hearing the stuff that you like, you basically use that as building blocks until you get to like the final sound. So what I did after this was basically bounce like a ton of sounds that I made in Polyplex at the weekend, and I saved them as one-shots on my computer. So here they are, Polyplex sounds, just a couple of them. So the cool thing about this is that I'm building this custom library of sounds. I'm personalizing my sound design, right? So I can save all of this and I can use it in future tracks as well, which I think is a lot of fun. So basically, right now, I've already got like quite a few sounds, and I could, in fact, like start making a track out of all of this stuff. But what I want to do is actually take it on another journey. And I'm going to basically send it to this thing over here called Crypt. Okay, so Crypt is my favorite sound design tool from NI. I think it's like 10 years old or something, and it's part of the factory library in Reactor. So if you have Reactor, you actually already own this. And what it does, it's a granular synth, granular sampler, and a granular sequencer. And this part is the sampler over here, and this part is the sequencer. And it's just mental. I love it. And it creates like tons of like randomness to the sound. It's fun. It's super intuitive. And I'm going to use this now to add like this another layer of like chaos to my sounds that I just created. So I took those sounds I created and I grabbed some more sounds as well, about 100 of them, and I loaded them all over here in the piano roll, just the same as I did before with Polyplex. And now I'm going to use it. So the thing is with Crypt is that because we don't have a lot of time, I can't go into detail about how this synth works, but there are tons of videos on YouTube that you can check out. But I'm just going to show you one super fast way of how you can work with this to get some cool sound results. So basically, I'm just going to let it run for a little bit. These two knobs over here, A envelope, attack envelope, and filter envelope, and this range knob, which is sample selection, are the interesting ones to create cool stuff. So I'm just letting it run, and as you can hear, Crypt is already doing its thing, right? Because granular synthesis is about taking a sound and like breaking it down into little parts, rearranging it, and then spitting it back out again with tons of effects and that stuff. And this is basically what it's doing right now. And with the attack knob, I can basically, with a really fast attack, just shorten the length of those samples, and I can speed them all up. With the sample selection knob, what I can do is I can just add more samples to the mix. Yeah? And then I've got things like effects, like reverb and things like that. So what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to have a little go. Yeah? I'm going to sit back, turn a few knobs, and listen, poke it in a few different directions, and see if I can hear something that like really interests me. Yeah? All right. Basically, I could just keep on going for a really long time, but yeah, I have to stop. All right. So, yeah, so I guess I've already overran. So, like, maybe just a couple of tips at the end for how I suggest going about your sound design, or how I go about doing my sound design, is don't get bogged down in like the little details. Sound design is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be spontaneous and playful. It does not have to be like frustrating and laborious, at least not all of the time. And the other thing is, yeah, try out lots of different sounds and record it, and record the output, listen to it, be a bit selective, yeah? Don't be too precious about throwing stuff away. I know this is a problem that like most of us have, and me included. Yeah, just try out a lot of different things. And for me, like sonic hook basically means to me like the sound that defines the track. That's what it means to me. So I hope these like tips and tricks like help you in some way with your own sound design. Yeah, thank you very much. Cheers.
We've got time for some questions. Are there any questions out in the audience? We skipped over you before. I'm sorry about that. Any questions for Nadine about how she uses Reactor, or anything for that matter?
I think that the cool thing with Reactor is that when you buy Reactor, not only do you get access to like all these factory ensembles that I just showed you over here, but at the last NI sessions, I showed instruments that users built in Reactor. And for me, that's where it really gets interesting, when the users build instruments, or they take an instrument like Crypt, for example. Crypt is in the factory library, but what some of our users did is they took that and they modded it. You can find it in the user library, and there's a version now of Crypt which you can play on the touchpad. So, and that's tons of fun. I would have liked to have done that today, actually. I just didn't have time to set it up. But this is, for me, it's a really cool way. Someone, likes an instrument, they take that instrument, and they make something else out of it, and they share it with the other users. So that's, for me, like the main reason that I'm such a big fan of Reactor, is that you can just modify it in so many different ways and adapt it to make it do what you want it to do.
It's interesting to me because the question for Kabuki earlier about the difference between sound design and composition, or track writing, whatever you want to call it. I mean, for you, it's really kind of all one process, right? I mean, you're doing it all at the same time, essentially. Yeah, I mean, but that came from me working in sound design at Native Instruments. When I studied sound design. I wrote my thesis on granular synthesis. And at the time, I was creating like presets, as I said, like for Massive and Absinthe and Battery. And that was kind of the first time in my life that I had completely separated these two processes. So I was basically creating sounds, but I wasn't making music with them. And I found that to be, quite difficult to do, and and frustrating as well. So now when I go about doing sounds, I actually try to combine the two. Do you ever have trouble kind of stopping the sound design part and like focusing on the writing again? Do you ever kind of go down the rabbit hole too far? Yeah, totally. And I had this conversation with Aerosmith actually recently as well, who made Razor, and he has the same problem with building instruments, because he built Razor, and he finds it really hard to say, okay, now I'm going to do music, and now I'm going to build an instrument. It's really difficult for him to combine the two, and it's definitely something that is quite difficult to set up. There was a question from the chat from Peter. How would you use Polyplex in a live setup? In a live setup? Well, it depends really what you want to do. I mean, the cool thing about Polyplex is that, I don't know if you could see it before, but on my keyboard, the keys were color-coded, basically 8 different colors to show you the different sounds that are on the keys. But they also had an octave of just red keys, and what this lets you do is you can save different kits on the red keys, and you can switch between them while you're playing live. And I know that a lot of users do that actually. So they have this beat running. The beat doesn't actually change its pattern, but then they use the red keys to just change the sounds. So that's something that I've definitely seen a lot, and it's really cool because you can actually jam a little bit on the red keys and just completely change the sound settings the whole time while the same beat runs through. So it's a cool remixing tool as well. Are there any other questions from the audience out there right now? Yeah.
I have a question with regard to Polyplex. Just about, I've used it and understood it with the random kind of the dice roll vibe of it, but then I guess I wanted to be able to change the. Let's say you're looking at the LFO, the modulation of the LFO. If I want it to make maybe last for 2 bars, can you go in and control the elements of the different parameters, or do you have to leave certain aspects to randomization?
So with the LFO, what you can do is, first of all, you can sync it to the track so that it runs in sync with the track. And then what you can do is you can automate the amount, which is usually what I do in order to solve that. But it basically comes down to automation for me. Yeah.
Are there any other questions out there that I can't see? Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Nadine. This was really, really cool.